All right, everyone, this is Fernando with yet another new My Movie Review podcast. In this case, covering a classic, a fan favorite, something that is still much heralded to this day, even after all these years that it's come out, and is still something that fans want more of, but blessedly has remained a single movie, just as is the original, in other words, ever since its release. I had a chance to rewatch this movie while I was there on a flight to Southwest going to Las Vegas. I highly recommend Southwest too for stuff like this because whenever you're taking their flights, you're actually able to stream a bunch of movies for free straight into your phone. It doesn't even count against any kind of data or anything like that. It'll just basically be streamed within the phone itself. And it gave me a chance to rewatch this. Of course, I'm talking about Beetlejuice. You've seen it, I've seen it multiple times. I'm sure others have seen it even more times than me. But rewatching this just the other day, my goodness, it is still as amazing and as fresh as possible. So original, too, with regards to its characters, its storyline, and its ideas. And it was great to be able to catch even yet new things associated with the film. So let's go ahead and let's give my review here for Beetlejuice. And then at the very end, I'll give my stars ratings associated with it. So, yes, Beetlejuice. Isn't that crazy? With a name like that, you would think that this would have been a film that would have just been kicked to the side, that nobody would have paid attention to it, thought of it as being some kind of quirky thing. And truly, it is. It absolutely is. Of course, from the mind of Tim Burton, here you have his fantasy being placed on film in all of its ultra apex type scenarios. Like you have the paranormal, you have gothic associations with it, with a daughter, you have stuff involving exorcisms, you have the afterlife, you have weird characters, obviously like Beetlejuice, the way he looks, the way he dresses. You have the afterlife, in this case, with its almost like workaholic type routines that the ghosts have to follow through. You have the sandworms, you have Jupiter, or was it Saturn? Yeah, it was Saturn, wasn't it? And then you have other crazy just ideas that pop in here and there, almost like it's Spitfire. Like it's just happening in some cases so fast that you have to keep rewatching the scenes over and over in order to catch what you missed. But all of this plays out so beautifully. The fact that, let's talk about the pros associated with it. All these crazy kooky ideas, they never should have meshed. Like it should have been something where it was almost like throwing everything into the wall and seeing what sticks. But in this case, with Beetlejuice, everything just works so perfectly. The buildup of it too, starting off so simply with the Maitlands, like there they are, a cookie cutter couple going over to some store, just falling, young love, and then falling over from the bridge, and then causing that fateful accident. And then there they are, in this case, moving on to the afterworld and being introduced to the handbook of the recently deceased. And then once that happens, then they go into that area there that showcases all the bureaucracy that happens in the afterlife. And then they encounter Juno and all those crazy things. And then all that slow buildup adds more and more mystery and intrigue, including having the Dietzes that you see there being introduced and moving into their household, kind of creating some conflict, but nothing, of course, comes close to eventually the reveal of Beetlejuice. He's almost like forewarned by Juno and then others as well to not necessarily say his name, not bring him forth because of the calamity that'll ensue. But of course, it happens, and when it does, it pays off beautifully. So the characters, absolutely, with the best thing associated with the film, the best pro, are the wonderful original characters. The Maitlands, the Dietzes, Beetlejuice, the Afterlife, even Otho. Otho there that was within the film with his stylistic look and then his shock whenever he was introduced in some 70s getup. Here you have him being there within the film, even just as a side gig, creating such memorable lines and quotations here and there. So, yes, the characters were so amazing. And of course, what really helped also was the wonderful storyline. So much original stuff that was introduced within the storyline. I mean, when you look back, is this film a horror film? Because here you have, in this case, the young couple dying quite tragically because of a dog, no less, getting in the way in front of them, and then they, of course, humanely just swerving to the side to avoid it. But because of their death, then here they are introduced to this afterlife that is almost eternal. There they are stuck within the home itself while the Dietzes come in and then start creating havoc, like just completely destroying the home from the inside out, and then shattering their dreams, their young dreams that they had afterward. And then you have, of course, all those scenes involving the corpses and involving the skeletons and involving those weird manifestations. It makes you wonder, is this truly a horror film? But it's not, obviously. It's more along the lines of a comedy. But even then, is it a straightforward comedy? Because it's not like a kid's comedy, which is outright weird because I believe this is what, Warner Brothers, right? And they obviously market it as a kids type movie, but there's so many ideas there that just don't fall into that play. Like Juno, for example, clearly has that stuff in her neck. In other words, that slice that she had in her neck, indicating that she was suicidal or something caused her to have that slice that she committed to her neck herself. Or of course, you see the others in the afterlife there involving the guy that was burnt up. That's a pretty shocking image. And then you have the other one, the guy with the bone that was stuck in his neck, another pretty shocking image. And then, of course, when Beetlejuice turns into that snake and then starts terrorizing the Deetzes, all that stuff makes you wonder, is this truly a kid's film? But it's not. So if it's not a horror film, it's not a comedy, it's not really a kid's film, where does it land? Even though we don't know, it still plays out so beautifully because of the storyline, because of the amazing original ideas that pop up within it. And what's great about it too is because we are witnessing the Maitlands and what's happening to them for the first time. We are in turn becoming just like them. We're seeing all of this calamity that ensues happen to them at the same time it's happening to us. And that's what makes it so beautiful, because when we're finally introduced to Beetlejuice himself, we see the same shock and awe that they have as we have in our case. And then another thing that works really great is, of course, the acting. Everything is just so great, especially, of course, with Michael Keaton himself, completely unrecognizable in this film. His acting is so good. Picture this: every scene that he's done there in Beetlejuice as Beetlejuice, he, about 1 year later, was next as Bruce Wayne Batman. Same person, same actor, two totally different believable roles. One as a stoic Dark Knight character avenging crime and then what happened to him, and then here's another one as almost like a perverted clown like, I don't know what you could call him, like what that mold is and everything is with him. Maybe he was a decaying corpse, something along those lines. Two totally different characters, all by the same actor, and that shows how wonderful the acting is. And even then, the Maitlands, like when you have Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, they have to have a more reserved set of roles, but they played theirs with such great believability. Like you absolutely believe them and what happened to them at that bridge, and then afterward with the mysteriousness surrounding the afterlife and them trying to get through it. You believe everything there. And then, of course, the bureaucracy, and then also the Dietzes with their almost like capitalistic type turn where they're looking to make everything to a profit. All of it was just wonderfully played by all the actors that were there. Otho, again, I'll pick on him. Great guy, like in this case, a small role, but he definitely made sure that it was impactful. And then, of course, another great thing were the special effects. I know that. Oh, by the way, one thing too that was interesting about the acting. Apparently, some of those actors, and I don't know exactly who was named and so on, but apparently some of them, when they were reading the script, they had to be convinced so many times to take on the role because they just didn't quite understand it. They couldn't see how this stuff would play out within the film afterward, whatever is shooting, in other words, how it would turn out afterward. But luckily for them, they joined in, and that's why they've been a part of this classic for so many years now. And then, yeah, the special effects, another thing that's much heralded. I mean, some of the stuff looks really amazing, like in the case that when Beetlejuice becomes the actual snake itself, all of that is practical effects, and then, of course, some stop motion, but it still works out really well. And then other stuff, and just involving him putting on, like in that case, those spikes, and in other situations involving those people in the afterlife, like the burnt guy and the guy with the chicken bone in his throat. And then, like you see there with the actual hands coming out, all that stuff, it just adds to the uniqueness, to the quirkiness associated with the film. Is it play on cheap? I mean, yeah, I think that was the idea too, that some of the filmmakers I mentioned several times, that the idea was to purposely make things look cheap just to ensure that it becomes more memorable. And it worked. I thought it definitely helped with making this almost like kiddie friendly because of the cheap special effects that were within the film. Great, great stuff. And then, yeah, overall, again, another thing that works out well for the film is just having the tone for it. And in that case, being the Tim Burton tone, how everything just has to be slightly off. It looks like it's a classic 1950s Americana type film whenever you see the house and you see the pastures, the beautiful looking pastures in town afterward. But you mix in something like this involving the paranormal and exorcisms and about hauntings and so on. And there's that classic touch from Tim Burton. It just has to be a little bit awkward at the same time that it looks so classic. But yeah, great, great stuff. As far as the cons, none. Absolutely none. Maybe one would be you wish you could see more of Beetlejuice as far as how he came to be, what happened to him. I remember reading somewhere that the scriptwriter stated that Beetlejuice's character came to be because hundreds of years back, when he was a regular man, apparently he decided to commit suicide. He committed suicide by hanging himself. But unfortunately, the way he hung himself didn't kill him outright. It made him die a very, very slow death. I think that's why he has that mold associated like with his lips and with the side of his neck and heads and so on, is because his body was like slowly deteriorating at the same time that he was slowly dying. But yeah, I wish we could have seen more of Beetlejuice's origin, his history, how he came to be, how Juno had him as his assistant, why he decided, maybe some of those scenes involving him deciding to go out to himself as a freelance bioexorcist, as he proudly stated. I mean, all those nuanced ideas about business, about the afterlife, about trying to scare hauntings and have it be some kind of capitalistic grab, their version, in other words, of a capitalistic grab. It's great stuff. I mean, it goes back to the fantastic original ideas that this film has. But yeah, that's the only con I could think of. I wish we could have seen just more of the man himself, the ghost with the most, as far as Beetlejuice. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and I'll give this my star rating 5 out of 5. Absolutely wonderful film. When I was watching this there at the airplane, on the airplane, in other words, to Las Vegas, it flew by. Like it's 90 minutes long, and it was some of the quickest 90 minutes I've ever experienced on a flight. It was really wonderful to be able to revisit this movie and then get to see it just one more time. I hear always news about stuff related to a sequel, about having this type of movie finally branch off into another updated sequel, like set 30 years later, and then you have Winona Ryder's character, Lydia, all grown up and then having a daughter of her own, and then apparently that daughter now encountering Beetlejuice and something like that afterward. But I refrain from that only because, as much as I want a sequel to happen, at the same time, this was lightning in a bottle. You definitely want to keep the beauty and the magic of this one film just be as is. Like, you don't want it to have anything perchance ruining it with like a second film, because what if it bombs? What if the second film is just bad, and when that happens it'll just tarnish everything. Some sequels do work, like for example the Blade Runner 2049. It was really good, in my opinion at least. It was really, really good, and it lived up as a sequel to the original classic. So you have to take that chance. But still, I don't know if I want another sequel for this film. If there is one, you better bring back Danny Elfman. I forgot to mention him as another pro associated with this movie. I believe this was the first time that you had Danny Elfman and Tim Burton working together in a film. And obviously, that created a lifelong type partnership for future films. But yes, his music was just so amazing. I have the soundtrack on cassette. That's how early I bought this. When it came out, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw this probably on good old rabbit ears afterward. But the music was so good that I ended up ordering a cassette through some online mail catalog of sorts. And I still have it. I still have the original. It's probably a collectible considering how rare the cassettes are for Beetlejuice. But yeah, if the sequel comes back, you better believe you have to have Danny Elfman there. But yeah, what do you guys think? Beetlejuice, such a classic, right? There she is, Deo, singing that song with that haunting there at the kitchen. Do you give it 5 stars as well? What are your thoughts on the film? Maybe the sequel, the characters, everyone as far as the storyline? Let me know. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.